right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fearcast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD, anxiety spectrum disorders, and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss, and I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety. Thank you all so much for joining me. This is a question and answer based podcast where you get to send me questions about OCD and questions that are on your mind about anxiety and how it works and how you can beat it or work with it and live with it. And that's what we're doing today. I have an audio question that I'm going to play. I've got a bunch of audio questions in the pipeline coming. So this is one of them. So I hope you all enjoy the audio questions as much as I do. And this is a good one. So we'll put this one up as you are noticing. They're like, yeah, of course, we're listening to it right now. Here's what's going through my head. This is why I'm so distracted right now. I'm going deaf. I think that's what's happening. Probably, right? Probably. I have a kind of an ear infection thing going on. And what's happening is out of my right ear, nothing is happening. Like I can barely hear anything out of my right ear. And it like a couple days ago, it was like hurting. And I was like, oh man, this sucks. So, but it's not hurting now. It's just now I just can't hear much out of it. So I'm wearing my headphones right now, and I hear a lot coming out of in my left ear, and that's great. Right ear, not so much. I'm going, maybe the headphones are going bad, so I like switch them, and I'm like, no, it's still the same thing. I kind of adjust the little rubber things. They're earbuds. I pop them in. So adjust the little rubber things because sometimes that can muffle things. Pop that in, and nope, sounds the same. Still muffled in my right ear. So. Here are the options, right? The options are, well, it's an ear infection, or it's, I got, stuff in it and it's kind of funky, and I got stuff in my ear and it's plugging it up. Now, that happens sometimes. My mom would tell me stories about how her ears would get so plugged up that she legit couldn't hear anything. She can still hear now. So, yeah, and historically speaking, I've gotten ear infections, or I've had stuff getting in your ear, weather changes, stuff like that happens, and ears go funky for a couple days and then they go back. Yeah, that's happened to me before, but my brain says I'm going deaf. So that's an option that might be happening. So I'll have to sell all my music gear. No more music. I'm never going to hear my kids talk, so that's going to suck. I'm really glad actually I took sign language. So I took 4 years of sign language in high school and 2 years in college. So, I mean, that'll help. No one I know knows sign language. So, there's that. I'll have to make a whole bunch of new friends. Anyways, so that's what's happening. I will keep you all updated with my hearing, whether or not that's going to be happening. Really glad that I have a podcast, which is an audio medium. So that'll be fun. Anyhow, back to you all. So I've got this audio question here. So we'll play this one in just a minute. So this question comes from Lou. What she did is she went over to Instagram and sent me this audio over there. And she also sent me a little bit of background information. So I'll play the audio here, and then I'll give you a little bit of the background in a minute.
Hey Kevin, I find it very hard to accept my thoughts that represent my worst fear, considering them as true in the moment. I feel so anxious about them, but my therapist said that that's the solution to get to manage my fears. And I get the idea, but don't know how to make it happen. I get triggered by the most stupid situations, and it's not even the thought about whether or not I'm gay, which I know I'm not, but situations like that trigger thoughts about having had these thoughts in the first place. And that leads back to my initial fear that I might be gay. Every thought related to it still makes me very uncomfortable, and I feel like I can be triggered into thinking about thinking it and really wanted to stop. Happy to hear back from you, and I hope that what I've said made any sense.
All right. Thanks so much, Lou, for that question. So here's what she kind of sent, and it kind of reiterates what she had said, but I'll just read it anyway. She says, last summer, the question, am I gay, suddenly popped into my head and made me more anxious than I've ever been. And I kept ruminating over it for weeks until I didn't feel like myself anymore because my mind kept questioning my sense of self. I'm sure that I'm not gay, but the thoughts keep coming back, though different, she says. She says, though different. Seemingly out of nowhere, triggered by standing in line behind a woman. And then she goes on to say, sometimes it's more like getting anxious that I had all the thought daily and not anymore. But this makes me question my initial thought whether or not I'm gay again. I wonder, or I worry that this will never stop to make me uncomfortable. She says, thank you so much, Lou. So I tried listening to this a couple of times, read through the prompt a couple of times, just to kind of wrap my head around what's going on, and it brings me back to it. Well, whenever I read questions, I work with a client, and like that, I always want to know, like, well, what's the problem? Like, what is the primary concern? Is it about your sexuality and you're struggling with whether or not you're gay? Is it that the thought is there and you're struggling with the fact that you had an intrusive thought that bugs you? Are you frustrated with the fact that you are getting distracted and pulled into this kind of line of thinking when it's not something that you really wanted? All of this goes back to what justifies the compulsion, what justifies all the effort you put into this, Lou. And I think it's really important to take a moment to think about, well, what is it about this that bugs me so much? Why do I get sucked into this? Why is this such a Achilles heel for me that this thought shows up, everything stops, everything is distracted. I have to figure this out. I have to eliminate something. I have to solve something. What is it about this in this moment? So, and you kind of alluded to some things. And again, this is one of the problems with this podcast is that, I only get so much information. Again, Lou, if you were here in my office, we'd have a lot longer conversation and we could do that. However, you are somewhere in the world or outside of the world. Lou could be an alien. Let's not rule this out. We don't know. Anyways, so I'm trying to have to speculate here, but you alluded to some things kind of like, where was it? Oh, you said you were kind of questioning your sense of self. And I started wondering, like, is one of the things that bothers you about this is that, it feels like you don't really know everything about yourself, and like this is a problem that needs solving somehow? Or does it feel like you don't fully and truly know yourself? So that's what leads you back into this ruminative cycle. I don't know. But something about it seems so important to you. Now, it could also be, and sometimes this happens, is that we just get into this cycle of thinking, that there are these associations that you have, and it feels like maybe I'll finish that thought. There are these associations that we have, so we have this thought, which leads to this one, which leads to that one, which leads to this action, and you kind of play the tape, in a sense. And you've gone through this a lot. You've been thinking about this a lot. You said you've been doing this since summer. So I think, last summer. So it's been this ingrained built habit that you have. So it could just be now you're playing the tape. You go back and you continually say, all right, but I know I'm straight. I know that I'm not gay. Okay. And this makes me then think about, something from ICBT. And I really like this component from ICBT. It talks about the obsessive doubt. I'm going to mess up the term. But it's basically this. It makes this accusation about yourself that you don't believe that's true. It's this assumption that it says, maybe you are gay. And you go, nah, that doesn't make any sense. It goes, yeah, but maybe you are. No, I'm not. Prove it. Or, you know what? Are you sure you're sure? And you go, oh, man. Maybe I'm not, but that doesn't make any sense. Let me prove that I am. Let me just figure this out. Let me just get to the bottom of this and just kind of put a little cap on this, and so I can shut this down. And then you're back into the cycle. And that's one of the ways that we justify the importance of it. I also wonder about, is it, because you also talked about, you said in this, you don't really get triggered by the thought that you're gay, but you get triggered to the memory of the thought. but it eventually leads somehow back to worrying about the original thought. That I would love to know more about in the kind of the thought process, because is it more of the process of going, all right, I'm going through my day, standing behind this woman. You see this woman, and you get a reminder. Oh yeah, remember last summer when I was really worried about me being gay? Boy, that was a wild time. Or, how awful was that? That was terrible and frustrating, right? I mean, it could simply be that. Hey, remember this time. But then is it, oh man, why is it that I'm still bugged by this? Why do I still have to deal with that? Now back to the original question. Now, I don't think I'm gay, but maybe am I gay? Maybe I am. I wonder, is that the thought process that you're kind of going down? And again, does it just feel like it's this, I almost get the sense that it feels like it's just this unanswered question, this kind of like nagging feeling that you have. It kind of reminded me of a time that when I was 10, this is going to be a very weird story. Stick it there, sticking it with me. So my grandma has this cabin up in a city called Crestline. It is this small little dot on a map that is known for almost nothing other than this cabin, and it has a lake. Anyways, that's a separate conversation. So we have this cabin, and we go there all the time, winter, summer, all this stuff. But as you basically go on this mountain road that's like on a cliff, and you get up there and you swing a left into a town. You go down a little hill and you're into this town. So I remember though, when I'm 10, you were driving out to the main road, probably going back home or going somewhere, and you look over this valley, and it's there's not a whole lot there, but you see the whole city, and it's relatively pretty. It's kind of fun. At that time, I had some thought. Now, I was like, oh, I need to remember this for later, because I can't do anything about it right now. It's I'll deal with it when I get home, but I should remember this. All right. So I put a pin in it. I put a pin, though, in the wrong thing. The thing that I remember was the fact that I need to remember something, not the thing that I was supposed to remember. To this day, and I am not 10 anymore, to this day, I have no idea what it is that I thought was so important that I needed to remember it. But you know what I remember? The reminder to remember it. So that was not helpful. However, your story, Lou, reminded me of that, in the sense that there's almost this sense, as you're talking about it, that you get reminded of this previous conversation, this previous debate that you had with yourself, and you had with your emotions, had with your desires, had with your arousal. And you said, all right, I need to figure this out because something seems off and it's freaking me out and it's making me worried. But you also said, it doesn't bother me anymore. But then I get triggered by it, and then eventually leads back to the thought and the debate. Okay, why am I going through all of this? I would love for you, Lou, to kind of take some time to think about, what is it about this that bothers you? Is it the fact that you get distracted and you just kind of go down that path? And is it that this question is unanswerable, and you need to eventually, at the end of it, need to leave it unanswered? It reminded me of, it's almost as if, again, and actually going back to the cabin thing, we were up there recently, a couple of weeks ago, and every time I'm up there, I am reminded of that thought. Every single time we leave from the cabin, we go out to the main road, I'm always reminded of that memory to remember something. Is it kind of like that, where now you're living your life, you stand behind some woman and you get triggered to that thought? You had that thought. Hey, remember that time? But it's as if, like for me, I'm now going back into the process of trying to figure out, okay, what on earth was I trying to remember as a 10-year-old? I don't know. It looked like a city. Well, I was playing SimCity a lot, the original SimCity, on a computer box. Was it that? I was trying to remember something I needed to do in the game? Was it something having to do with, I don't know, other nonsense 10-year-old things that, yeah. I'll never know. I'll never get to that answer. And Lou, for you, there's something about this process that is unanswerable. And that we also need to remember is part of the anxiety disorder. An alarm goes off when you are standing behind a woman in various other places, wherever else you get triggered. The alarm goes off, but that alarm is way too sensitive. It is going off at things that are not dangerous, things that are irrelevant to you, things that are irrelevant to the things that you desire or want in life, as you have acknowledged. And that process pulls you back because ostensibly something's dangerous, something's bad, something needs to be fixed. So you dutifully go in and try to figure it out. But there's nothing there because you've searched it, you've thought about it, you've considered it, you tried to prove it. And over and over again, you've come up with nothing. So I wonder what it would be like this time to acknowledge that you have an anxiety disorder. It is anxiety that should be there. It's good. We should have some anxiety, but it is a disorder. It is out of order. It is not working as it ought to. And in your case, in this instance, it's working way too much and is easily triggered. So when the alarm goes off, rather than trying to figure it out or going back into the debate for yourself, say, oh yeah, this is my anxiety. I know this process. Here's how the story's going to go. It's going to make me want to try to figure this out. It's going to bug me. I'm going to hate it. I'm going to be frustrated with it. Yeah, I know how that'll go. And it leads me to another approach that you might be able to do in terms of working with this. I haven't talked about this in a long time, but I have this kind of example of something called anxious drunk. So oftentimes I'll ask the question, hey, have you ever been drunk before to a client? And they'll go like, yeah. And sometimes they say no, which is good. I suppose that's good. It's this idea that, you know what, when you're drunk, that's not the time to start making big decisions. That's the time to ease off of whatever you're doing, take a step back, have a seat, and sober up. We take care of ourselves. We drink water. We try to go to sleep. We eat greasy food probably. But the point is that we don't keep engaging with the thing that is causing the problem in the first place, in this case, alcohol. No one has sobered up by continuing to drink. So one, we stop that. And then we take care of ourselves and wait for our sober mind to show up again. And that's when we start to do things that are important and necessary and require all of your mental faculties, right? The same thing when you're anxious drunk. When you're anxious, we're not thinking very clearly. We act out of impulse. We react out of small bits of information and completely ignore other more important information. It's during those times that we acknowledge, all right, right now my anxiety is kicking up, even though I don't know exactly why. I don't know the reason for it. I don't know exactly what it wants me to do, but I know that I'm anxious. And continuing to ruminate, continuing to try to solve the puzzle is like continuing to drink when you're drunk. It's only going to exacerbate the problem. So what do we do during that time? We acknowledge that we're anxious. We acknowledge that we're anxious drunk, and we wait for sobriety to set in. And we can take a step back and observe what the anxiety feels like. You can notice what the urge is, what it wants you to do. You can reflect on what other thoughts that are going through your mind. You can also redirect your focus towards things that are tangible, things that are in the here and now, maybe necessary tasks that you have to do. Maybe you're going to get groceries. Maybe you're hanging out with some friends. Maybe you're at an amusement park. I don't know. But you redirect back to the things at hand. And you say, this thing over here is unhelpful. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to wait. I'm going to acknowledge that there is a sense of uncertainty, and I'm going to ride the wave of anxiety until the wave passes. And then I'll deal with it. Or I won't. Because oftentimes when the anxiety passes and sobriety sets in, the thing that you thought you needed to do all of a sudden doesn't seem as important. Like my dumb example is like, all right, when you're drunk, and something that feels so important, all of a sudden now when you sober up, you're like, man, texting my ex was probably not that important, or as important as I thought it was in the moment, right? Or whatever that thing is for you. Anyhow, Lou, it's one of the ways that you can tolerate and work through this is when that anxiety starts to show up. observe the process for yourself and observe what is it that's so important about this for you. Why are you needing to involve yourself in it? Another really common approach that some therapists will talk about is just simply labeling that thought as a thought. I'll kind of share the example of like, all right, when this particular anxious worry pops up, and Lou, so for you, when you are out and about and you're happening to stand behind a woman, and you may be thinking about a whole bunch of other stuff, whatever it is that you're trying to do, and then all of a sudden you realize that you're standing behind a woman, and then something about that gets triggered, right? That when that thought pops in, you just say, oh yeah, there's a thought. Oh yeah, I know that one. And simply you can just say, and some people just simply say thought, or they go OCD thought, or they go, whatever it is, kind of acknowledging that there is a thought in mind, but not a requirement. It's not a necessity. It's not something that is going to take your time or deserves your time and attention, other than just the fact that you've noticed it. Now, you can practice this outside of just moments that you're standing behind women. And in fact, it's a mindful, present-based approach just to acknowledge that there are things going through your mind. And there are mental images, or there are thoughts, or there are urges that you experience. And as you start to notice those more and more, you start to then notice that you have a choice on what you're going to do in response to them. But the first step is to say, this thought is an option. Yeah, that one's there. Well, what do I want to do about it? Well, we can do nothing about it, or we can decide to do something with it. But the first step is to say, this isn't an obligatory thing to me. It's a thought. All right. Thanks, brain. Thanks for looking out for me. Oh, you're also reminding me of something that I went through last summer that was highly emotional, that was highly stressful, that felt so important to me. Oh yeah, I remember that time. Thanks for the memory. But we can leave it at that, and then reshift back to the other tasks at hand, maybe the focus of your day, maybe the conversation, maybe your homework, maybe your email, maybe the grocery shopping. I don't know. Somehow I think that you're grocery shopping in this example. But it's that we can acknowledge it as a thought, as a memory, as an association from somewhere in our mind. Acknowledge it, and then we shift back. So I hope this answers your question. And there were kind of a lot of things with it, but I think the main thing is for you to think about what is so important about this, and why is it demanding so much of you, and why does it need it, how does it justify the reasons for doing compulsions? So I'll leave it there. If you have follow-up, feel free to shoot me a message and let us know. I'll share that in a future episode. But until then, Lou, thank you so much for your question. Thank you for listening to the Fearcast. If you would like your question answered on a future episode, please click on the Submit a Question link at fearcastpodcast.com. If you would like your question answered sooner, please send me a recording of your question to questions@fearcastpodcast.com, or by sending me an audio message through Instagram by DMing me at fearcastpodcast on Instagram. If you like the Fearcast, please write a review on your podcast platform of choice. Please remember that the Fearcast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, please go over to fearcastpodcast.com and click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye.